In the current crisis, we can't stay in physical contact with one another. By and large, we're cut off from family members, from friends and colleagues. We can't meet them at work, at the mart, or even over the farm gate. But it's still really important to keep in touch, to try and stay informed. To that end, over the next few weeks, Quality Meat Scotland will be producing these podcasts. I'm Mark Stephen, and each week I'm going to be speaking to one of the QMS team, an industry insider, to try and bring you their perspective on the current situation and to tell us what they're actually doing about it. This week I'm talking to Kate Rowell, who's chair of QMS. She's a farmer. She's actually from a long line of farmers, 5 generations, and she's a qualified vet. She and her husband Ed run the 750-acre Hundleshope farm on the Haston estate near Peebles. But we're also joined this week by Michael Shannon, who farms 100 hectares at Thankerton Farm near Biggar. He's also got a highly successful farm butchery and farm shop with the rather catchy title of Damn Delicious. Now, because current restrictions, we're all doing this at home, we'll just check everything's working. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
That's Michael. How about you, Kate?
Yes, I can hear you fine,
Good
thanks.
stuff. Okay, right. Let me start off with you, Kate. Tell me about your farm for a start. It used to be a monitor farm.
Yes, we were monitor farmers for Peeblesshire from 2012 to 2015. It's an upland farm. We've got quite a lot of hill ground, which is quite poor. We run Scottish blackface on that, and we have in-by ground where we grow a little bit of barley for our own use. We have round about 75 to 80 suckler cows and some cross sheep as well, which I'm pleased to report have just finished lambing.
And Michael, tell me about your farm.
So we're beef finishers mainly, finishing mostly Aberdeen Angus or mainly traditional breed. So a lot of shorthorns, a lot of lings, but mainly Anguses. Trying to finish them 100% on forage. So no meal, no grain, no inputs like that. So grazing grass in the summertime, and then we grow kale and swedes, which we graze in the wintertime in situ. So the animals are outside 365 days of the year. We're big advocates of electric fencing and paddock grazing, starting at a way back, long before it was in vogue. And so we rotationally graze all our cattle, and then we're trying to sell majority of our stock through our business, which you already mentioned, Damn Delicious, and the surplus we sell dead weight on the hook.
Kate, aside from a very real sense of relief you must feel that the lambing is now over, I watched your recent video on Facebook. You described the current crisis as, and I'm quoting here, the biggest disruption ever seen in peacetime. Give me some detail on that. How would you describe the current situation?
As farmers, we're used to markets being volatile. They go up and down all the time. Prices go up and down, and we're all quite used to adapting to that. But this has been unique in that it's not just agriculture that's affected, and every part of the economy kind of links to other parts. So, for example, the loss of the food service sector, restaurants and cafes and hotels, has made a huge difference to the markets for agricultural produce and livestock in particular.
I think you said in your video, in one fell swoop, you lost about 20% of your market.
Yes, so the calculations are that when the restaurants and food service closed, they bought 20% of beef in the country. So that beef then didn't have a home to go to just overnight. And that meant a huge remodelling of businesses who did have product there, but it wasn't packaged in such a way that it could go straight to retail. A lot of things had to be changed about their business model to be able to get that onto the shelves and back to consumers.
When you say repackaging, what do you mean? What kind of thing was happening?
Well, for example, a chef in a restaurant might buy in a whole sirloin. They might buy in a huge big piece of meat, which they then cut the way they want to cut it in order to present it to their clients. And obviously, your consumer at home doesn't want a huge big sirloin, but the company who were producing that haven't necessarily got the facilities to cut that into the pieces that consumers in supermarkets and convenience stores want to buy. Butchers have been much better at adapting to this, your local butcher on the high street, because they're obviously doing that cutting themselves, but in a much smaller way. But that's just one example of how this has been really, really disruptive to the whole market.
So what's QMS's role at the moment?
At the moment, QMS are trying to work with partners throughout the whole supply chain, and that's really to keep the supply chain open and functioning. At the very start of this crisis, there was really chaos, as everybody knows. Nobody knew what was going to happen next. Things happened very, very quickly. And the focus at QMS at that point really was to make sure that we kept product moving. We kept animals able to leave farms and go through markets and get to abattoirs, and we helped abattoirs work their way through things like social distancing and absence rates and things like that in order to make sure that the whole supply chain functioned. Now that things have kind of steadied up a little bit and we've come to a new normal, what we're trying to do now is help address the specific issues that are cropping up, things like the lack of demand for the higher value cuts, the steaks and things like that. So that's where things like our new marketing campaign are going to kick in and help.
Michael, as a jobbing farmer, what kind of support have you had from QMS?
Well, basically, we're all in this together. There is no doubt that the red meat sector is struggling at the moment due to lack of demand from the restaurant and the catering trade. That's going to have a massive knock-on effect. Initially, there were huge problems in the supermarkets. Supermarkets couldn't get supplies when lockdown first started, and lots of supermarkets didn't have any meat on the counter, never mind Scotch meat. Every cloud is a silver lining in a funny way. So the butchers have maybe be able to capitalise on this. We're smaller, quicker to adapt, but it's crucial that QMS keep promoting, Scotch beef, Scotch quality, and not let some of these poorer, inferior quality products imported into the country and be replacing the gaps in the market.
I'm going to come back to that later in this podcast, but first off, what are the main challenges you are facing? Because it's only, 6 weeks, 7 weeks down the line. It's not a lot of time to adapt.
Our biggest challenge actually has been coping with a massive surge. Originally when we set Damn Delicious up, the business was set up as a home delivery business, working online from the internet. Now that always sort of trickled along and it was okay. But in the last 6 weeks, that has absolutely and utterly skyrocketed. We're shipping meat every day all over the country. There's meat away today to Isle of Uist. There's meat away to Northern Ireland today. There's the usual ones away down south. And there's been huge challenges in that. One, there's been the processing here. But it's interesting because everybody else is really busy too. So sourcing packing materials has been an issue. We can't get insulated boxes to pack the goods in to get them shipped. There's been all sorts of challenges. We've had problems. We luckily were very quick to act with social distancing as much as we could. The shop has remained open. We limit the number of people that come into the shop. People are very good about that. We had to change how drivers come into the premises. We had to adapt how we deal with customers. A lot of customers are now paying by card, no cash. So there's just been a number of challenges, an ongoing thing. But the biggest issue has been keeping the supply up. And it's interesting because as butchers, we've suffered from the catering trade disappearing too, because some of the suppliers that we would get some of our sundry items from have lost so much of their business that some of them, in actual fact, have closed down, have just had to furlough all their staff and close down. So that has meant that we can't source certain products. So we're having issues with some of the sundries as well.
Kate, Michael used the phrase there, inferior products. Now, lots of the country are surviving on 80% of their usual salary, and a lot are surviving on a lot less than that. Is it reasonable to ask consumers to buy Scottish produce when there are cheaper alternatives from elsewhere?
Well, I think one of the things we're seeing from this crisis is that people are starting to understand a bit more about where their food comes from. And when they buy Scottish product and Scotch beef, Scotch lamb, specially selected pork, they can be absolutely assured how well those animals have been raised, how well the whole supply chain has been monitored to make sure that everything is absolutely top notch. And sometimes with other products from other countries, you can't be sure of that. The pricing shouldn't be that much different. We are selling fantastic product at a very fair price. Many butchers I've spoken to have told me that people are quite surprised that the price they're paying in the butchers is comparable to the price that they were paying in the supermarket. So that's a really good sign that people are buying more local from local suppliers. But also the supermarkets have to step up to the plate and they have to make commitments to source locally wherever possible. It's good for our health, it's good for the environment, and it's good for our industry.
How receptive are they? Because as you rightly point out, it doesn't jump, from the field straight onto the plate. There's a supply chain in between, and you have to convince every aspect of that supply chain, every point in the chain.
Absolutely, and every single point in the chain has to function. As Michael said, if one part, maybe even an unexpected part, disappears, then the whole thing breaks down. For example, things like vets. I'm a vet myself. You need to have a vet in an abattoir for it to be allowed to function. That's one person. If that one person isn't there, the whole chain breaks down from the farm to the supermarket. So part of what QMS have been trying to do in this whole crisis is make sure that every part of that supply chain is supported, that they're all talking to each other, so that we can make sure that everything continues to function as well as it possibly can in the current circumstances.
There'll be folk listening to this who think, oh yeah, this is a QMS podcast, so he would say that, wouldn't he, Michael? But I'm going to ask a question. You said you've got support from QMS. How important is it at the moment for farmers to support them, to support QMS?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. As an industry, we're famous for shooting ourselves in the foot. There's a lot of people within our industry who are very greedy and always go to wherever they get the best price. But the only way we will survive as an industry is if we stick together and we work together. We convince the general public at every opportunity that the product they're buying is the best product they can possibly get. And we deliver the best product that we can possibly get. Because there's no point telling someone that Scotch beef or Scotch lamb or special selected pork is the best if it isn't. We've got to be able to justify ourselves. So, we do get asked questions, and we still get people talk about things like hormones in their meat. People will ask us, because we're a farm shop, presume you don't use hormones. Well, nobody in Europe has used hormones since, 1980s? We've got to be able to stand over our product, and we've got to offer a quality product. And that goes through the whole supply chain. If one bit of the supply chain is letting us down, whether it's a haulier being cruel, whether it's an abattoir with less than acceptable standards, then the whole thing drops. But at the moment, we have a very active, we get checked, our butchery gets checked, our chills get checked, even get checked by the QMS inspectors to make sure that we're selling Scotch beef, because there are a few unscrupulous people who maybe don't.
Kate, again, you said in your Facebook video that you've got this new marketing campaign, 1.7 million, but there are other projects still going on in the background, things like Grass Check and Graze Plus. Explain those.
Well, those are our industry-facing initiatives. That's our industry development team who do Graze Plus. That's really copying the things that Michael has led the way with, to do with electric fences and pasture-fed animals. We've kind of tried to translate the fantastic things that he's doing out to a wider audience, so more people could do that and become more efficient and therefore make more money on their farms.
Do you tend to find, Michael, that farmers are coming onto your farm just to see what you're up to?
Oh yeah, for years. It did at one stage become a bit of a burden, because you could spend so much time showing other people around that you never actually got any of your own work done. That isn't as required anymore. As Kate says, QMS, with the whole Graze Plus thing, loads and loads of people are adapting to these systems. And to be fair, lots of people are doing it a lot better than me now. And so there's lots of people to copy. But it does sort of give you a slight wee glow of satisfaction as you drive around the countryside and you pass a field and see electric fences all across it, because you think, I was banging that drum 10 years ago. They're finally listening.
We all thought he was mad when we first saw what he was doing, but now we're all converted.
Still think he's mad, though. Yeah.
Well, my next door neighbour, I did once comment to him. I'd done something and I commented to him. I said, I'd love to hear what they're saying in the market today. And he says, they're not saying anything about you now. They're used to you.
It's a compliment of sorts, Michael.
Somewhere.
Yes, something of the kind. This is, today, Scottish Government just said, look, this is the end of the second third week period. There's no immediate sign of lifting of lockdown or anything of the kind. How long can the industry carry on like this? Have you hit a balance now? Is this the new normal?
I think every day is a new normal, to be honest. Things have settled down to some extent. People are getting used to social distancing, something that we didn't even know what it meant 7 or 8 weeks ago. Things are settling down, but there will continue to be change. And I think the thing that I've discovered, I've been in lots and lots of meetings recently within the industry and out with it. And the thing that I've realised is there's not going to be a switch that's like one day and we're all going to go back to the old normal the next day. This is going to be something that changes on a day-to-day, a week-to-week, month-to-month basis for a long, long time to come. And it is about being adaptable and about changing your behaviour as the circumstances change, I suppose. Farming is such a long-term game that we may feel the effects for longer than a lot of other sectors, because the decisions that we make now sometimes don't come to fruition for years. You know, things like cattle breeding, crops that we're planting, it takes a while for these decisions to sort of work their way through. So there will be a lot of volatility in a lot of places for a long time to come.
Obviously, this is a chance. Well, there's a necessity, Michael, for the industry to change, but it's also a chance potentially to change consumer behaviour, to make them think more about what they're actually buying and sticking on their plate.
Oh, I hope so. This has been a terrible situation. You know, my family are locked down just like everybody else. It's caused us a fair bit of stress. But on the plus side, there's a lot of good could come out of this. We're seeing a lot more people shopping locally. We're seeing a lot more people being sort of more discerning about what they're buying. Some of the comments we're getting from people saying, you know, I didn't know meat could taste this good. So from that point, and from an environmental point of view, this situation, even us just having this meeting today, would we have needed in a normal situation to drive to Edinburgh, to use fuel, create more carbon in the countryside? You know, there's a whole lot of possible benefits to come from this. And I think the general public will change, the whole of society will change. There's no normal now. There's lots going to change. There's a lot of people have now experienced working from home for the first time and found that it actually works. There'll be a lot of companies, although there's going to be carnage in some industries for people getting back to work. But we're certainly in our sector, it's had a massive benefit, and we supply a lot of small, local, independent retailers. And they've seen a huge upturn. And they've also the feedback they're getting from the customers saying, we didn't know you were here. We didn't know you did these products. We didn't know you did so well. We didn't know you cared as much. And also, we didn't know that the service level could be so high, because these people are working 24 hours a day, delivering orders to people's doors. You know, we're delivering stuff every day. We're delivering to older people who are in lockdown, and they really appreciate that. And I hope going forward that there'll be more of that, and people will be more, you know, we as a country have got to recognize that we've got to be more self-sufficient in our food industry and possibly in other industries. And that's what this situation hopefully has proven to the hierarchy as such.
It's an interesting point, though, Kate, isn't it? Because, I mean, the clues in the title, Quality Meat Scotland. For years, the organisation has been banging on about that, about quality. Now is the chance to demonstrate, however challenging the circumstances are, now is the chance to demonstrate that quality.
Well, absolutely it is. And I think, like Michael says, a lot of people who had maybe drifted away, younger consumers who had possibly never even tried some of our own home-produced red meat are getting the chance now to try it and realise just how good it is. They've also got more time on their hands, so people are searching out for recipes, they're searching out for new ways to cook, they're cooking more at home, obviously, because they can't go out. So hopefully all these things will continue on after lockdown's finished, after we all get back to this new normal that we're going to be in, and people will appreciate all that. And the farmers are all still here. We're all still working away behind the scenes quietly, producing the fantastic livestock that we've always done, which goes on to produce Scotch beef, Scotch lamb, and specially selected pork.
I also think that people maybe have started to realise that there's a cost to cheap. There's a cost, you know, environmentally. There's a cost to all sorts of exploitation across the world. So if people want to buy cheap, then they can't export their conscience. One of the things that people do is they import beef, import all sorts of products from other parts of the world and sort of close off their conscience, blinker themselves. So, you know, we are producing a high quality product with very high quality standards, and there is a cost involved in that. But it's not that massive a cost. It's a little bit, but it's not massive. You don't need to be a multimillionaire just to shop with your local shops.
Kate, QMS are doing work to try and help the farmers. Is there anything the farmers can do in return?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of the work we do is on social media. We do have TV and radio ads, but we do have a lot of social media posts. And to get the word out there, if farmers could like things, if they could share amongst their friends and network and comment positively on them, that all helps get the word out, and it helps explain the message of our fantastic Scotch produce that we've got in this country.
Indeed. Listen, Michael Shannon, Kate Rowell, thank you both very much. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you both. Thank you.